Okay, so now we're going to open Serum 2 and we're going to go to oscillator A and we're going to choose a regular saw wave. Then we're going to lower the random phase all the way down to 0. What that's going to do is it's going to make it that every time we trigger a note, every time that the bass plays a note, it starts from the same phase position. And that's important especially for plucky basses because we want the transient to stay stable, and by making it start from the same position, we're achieving exactly that. Now in order to turn it into a plucky sound, we're going to do that by enabling the filter, and we're going to use the MG low 12. We're going to set the cutoff to 200 Hertz, and we're going to bring the resonance all the way down. As you can see, it just eliminates that peak because we don't want to create a boost over here. So this is going to make sure that our sound stays clean and balanced. And in order to actually turn it into a pluck, because currently what we have is just a filtered saw wave, we're going to modulate the filter, the cutoff, with LFO1. We're going to set it to envelope mode. I have the rate set to 1/16th. And we're going to create a shape like so. So it's a curved ramp down. And we're going to drag and drop it into the cutoff. So what that's going to do is make it so that every time a note is being triggered, it's going to start with the cutoff open all the way up. So it's not filtering anything. And gradually, over the course of 1/16th, filter all of those frequencies. And it's going to result in something that sounds like this. So that's it. Now we have a plucky bass. So that's really the core of the Psy Trance bass sound. And what we're going to do now is just add a little bit more definition to it, but we're going to do it in a subtle way. So we're not going to change the sound in a drastic way. We're just going to add a little bit more definition to it. So we're just going to sculpt it a little bit and add some more finer details. Now the first thing that I want to do is accentuate the transient a little bit more in order to make it a little bit more plucky, add a little bit of attack to it. So the way we're going to achieve that is by going to LFO2, we're going to use it in envelope mode, and we're going to set the rate to fast, so all the way up, and we're going to set a shape like so a curved ramp down, and we're going to apply it to the main tuning over here. It's going to be unipolar, and I have it set to 60 semitones, so 60 ST, that's what we're going to enter over here, and that's going to give us 47%. So essentially what we're doing is we're making it so that our bass starts from 60 semitones up and pitching down to the normal pitch at a really high rate. And that's going to help us create a pluckier transient. And it's basically the same thing that we're doing with the kick. As you can see, we're starting from way up and pitching all the way down. So that fast pitch down creates those initial transients. And this is how it sounds with and without it. You see how we added a little bit more click to the sound? And now in order to give it a little bit more definition, what we're going to do is apply the same LFO into the cutoff over here, and I have it set to 70%. So basically what it does, it is creating this shape on top of the shape that we already created with LFO1, sustaining the cutoff a little bit longer at the high frequencies. So it delays the filtration by a little bit, which allows the higher frequencies to be heard a little bit more. And honestly, we could have achieved the same shape within filter 1, but the reason why I like to split it into 2 LFOs is because it gives you more control over the details. Even though you can do this, I'm pretty sure, and do something like this essentially, which is the same thing as what we're doing now. But yeah, it really doesn't matter how you do it. So here's how it sounds with and without. So yeah, as you can hear, it's very subtle, but it does make a difference. So now I just want to show you in the waveform the difference between that LFO2 that we've added and between not having it on. So as you can see, the pitch modulation added a little bit over here, and without it, you can see that there's nothing here. Also, the reason why you're not seeing anything here is because the pitch modulation also shifted the waveform's phase. So if I were to move this over here, now they're aligned in phase, so they're starting from the same phase position, but this version has a little transient at the beginning and this one does not. So that's essentially what we're doing to the sound. Now the next thing that I want to do is I want to make the sound a bit more pluckier, because currently if we were to look at the waveform of our sound, we can see how it's very blocky. It almost stays at the same volume throughout its entire duration. It dips a little bit, as you can see. This cycle over here is a bit quieter than the first cycle, but that's because of the filtration, the way that the filter is removing some of those frequencies as it reaches the 1/16th point. But what I want to do is to achieve something like this, where we get a little bit more of a volume decay towards the end of the sound, which is going to help define each bass hit and separate the 3 hits, and will help us get a little bit more movement out of our bassline patterns. So to do that, we're going to add another LFO. So LFO 3, we're going to set it to envelope mode. We're going to set it to a linear ramp up, and the rate is going to be set to 1/16th. And then we're going to drag and drop it into the level of oscillator A. And as you can see, I have it set to -15%. So what that's going to do is every time a note is being triggered, it's going to lower its volume in a linear way as the note progresses. But after I did that, I found that it wasn't enough. So I added another LFO with this shape right here, another linear ramp down, but the ramp down starts a little bit later. The LFO is also set to envelope mode with 1/16th rate, and I dragged it as well into the level of oscillator A, and I have it set to -25%. So the combination of those two LFOs is going to help us get that volume dip as the bass note is playing. So this is how it sounds with and without it. And you'll also be able to see it clearly in the waveform right here. So the shape is very blocky. We're not getting any separation between each bass note. And now I'm going to enable LFO 3 and 4, and this is how it's going to look now. So as you can see, we're getting a decay, which helps us define each bass note. And of course, you can feel free to experiment with whatever values you want, but I would just warn you to not go overboard, because then what you're going to do is you're going to eat up all of the bass. So I would say experiment, but also be careful to not go overboard with it. As I said, these are just minor details that we're adding, not big changes. Now, before we move on to the last part of this sound, I forgot to actually disable this EQ that I have on, and it's actually a huge part of the sound and making it sound the way it does. Because without it, a normal saw wave at this octave is just going to sound really nasally. So we're going to have to scoop up those frequencies at the 3K hertz range, as we did right here. As you can see, I lowered it by 8 dB, which is a lot. You know, that's not a small move, but it's a necessary one. It's really important, because listen to how it sounds without the EQ. Now, it's not that those frequencies are not important to the sound, and in any other sound, they would have sounded great. You know, if I wanted to make like a bass house womp type of sound, then I would want to actually accentuate those frequencies, because they contribute to the nasally sound of the sound that I'm trying to achieve. So even though this might seem like an extreme move, it's actually necessary for this sound. And the last thing that we're gonna do is talk about the phase position. But so far what we did is just make it so it starts from the same position, but we haven't defined the starting position. And this is important, especially for plucky basses, because the transient is so important for these types of sounds. And out of 360 degrees that we have right here, there's only one spot that actually works. And that spot is going to change based on the note that the bass is playing. So each bass note has a different spot. And this LFO right here, which we've applied to the main tuning, so because it's modulating the pitch, it also messes with the phase of it and the starting position. As you'll see, if I change this to something like this, we'll get a different phase cycle right here. So what you should look for is this position right here. You can see how we're getting a little bit of a transient at the beginning, and then the cycle starts from the very bottom, like so. This is what you're looking for. So if you have it set a little bit different, you know, in your version in Serum 2, don't worry about it. Just look for this phase shape, exactly how it looks like this. So yeah, it's really important to nail that starting phase position. And that's it. That's the sound. And by the way, I forgot to mention, if you don't want to guess if you got all of the settings and values right, and if you don't want to deal with any of it, I've created a preset pack, which you can get for free with all of the 14 different bass notes. So every preset is the same sound, but with different values for each bass note. So F, F sharp, G, G sharp, etc. So if you want to get it, there's going to be a link in the description. You can get it for absolutely free. And I did all of the work for you already, including adding stuff like this punch macro. So what this does, it controls LFO 3 and 4, which you can dial in the specific punch you want. So if you don't want your sub to be as punchy as I have it here in the default position, you can either drag it all the way up, which is going to make it look like this, as you can see, very blocky, or you can dial in your specific punch and have a little bit of decay. So you have that extra control for it.